The word for today, possibly for the new year, possibly for the decade and decades to come, is endurance. A word I've been exploring in the past weeks and months. And I think it really is central to the human journey and the spiritual journey. Because as human beings, we are given a lot to endure. Most of us, I would venture to say, are not good at it. We don't deal well with deprivation, with long stretches of uncomfortable experiences. Long winters, rains for 7 days in a row. Not having a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband or a wife, or not ever having gotten the recognition you deserved. Anyway, you all have a list of things you are having to endure. And how you endure in so many ways defines the ride, but more importantly, defines you. There is gracious endurance, and there is misery, where you thrust all of your inability to endure at everybody around you. And then there's mixtures of all that. I think there are people who pursue a spiritual practice as a way of avoiding, period, but in many ways as a way of avoiding the unendurable. What is it we can't endure? Well, the thing I'm picking up from my grandchildren is they can't endure their fears of the dark, the unknown, the fact that they know they're going to die, separation from people they love, change. These are all sort of unendurable things which they in the end endure. And that's the incredible thing about endurance. We somehow manage to do it. One of the primary painful aspects of endurance is that we project the difficulty of it way into the future. And then it just creates this tension, this discomfort, this unbearable quality on us. And we live under the weight of it. And you see it. You see it everywhere. And you see it right now in the culture. There are certain political things that people are finding it hard to endure. There are things happening in the world, have always happened in the world, but they're very visible to us now because of social media, because of media in general, because of so much availability of information that we find it hard to endure. Certain things come on the newscast in the evening, like different countries like Yemen, etc., and it is unbearable. Unbearable. Horrible things happen in life. And yet here we are. So, what to do? What to do when life becomes unendurable? Well, I'm here to speak to the only thing I speak to, which is, if you will, a kind of refuge. It's not a refuge that reduces suffering, it just helps you to endure it. It helps you to bear it. And there is, and you all have heard this from me, a space that we can go to inside that is a refuge, where you can step out of the cold, blistery, wintry snowstorm raging around you and find some degree of comfort. And that refuge is in the most easily accessible space, your heart. You go into your heart and you sit. And your heart will gently take you in and it will hold you. That's really it. If you no longer have your mommy around, or your daddy, or your nanny, or your whatever it is, or some loved one who will just take you and hug you, then this is a true safe haven. Inside you, there is something that loves you and that will hug you and take you in and tell you it's going to be okay. Now, as I've been speaking in recent weeks, there are times where you cannot get to the doorway of your own heart. It's too snowy, it's too blustery. There are fires raging around you. There are windstorms circling around you. There's too much public disorder. Whatever the problem is, you can't find your way. At that point, all you have is the promise of refuge. And that's where endurance really starts to show itself. Can I endure this unendurable whatever? You're outside in freezing cold weather and you forgot your jacket and you can't get in. The winds are blowing and your nose is getting frostbite and you're really in pain and there's no entry point. You can't find your way there. Almost everybody loses it at that point. It's really scary. You know, you're watching some of these television videos of people in the Paradise Fire trying to get out in their car and the fire is raging around them and the cars are completely dead stopped on the road. And there's no exit. You are in an unendurable situation, and some people did not get out of that. And if you heard some of those recordings, they really go deep. What do you do when you cannot endure what is, and the pathway in has not revealed itself? That's a real problem for human beings, and for each of us at varying times, where the pathway in just isn't showing itself. Of course, prayer is a good thing you can try. Asking for help is a good thing to try. But if you're in the middle of a parking lot and there's fires raging, if you're lost in the woods and you're freezing, if all of your friends have deserted you for some reason, if everything you want in life is not happening, and you're just out there in the cold and you can't find your way in, and you've tried asking and praying, and nothing happens, what now? This is an interesting thought, but you might want to consider it. And again, I reference this now far more often than I ever expect to. But the idea of Christ on the cross suffering and asking for help, asking why he's been forsaken, and clearly suffering and unable to endure the pain, makes a switch into thinking about and caring about others rather than himself. And that gets to the core of the human journey. The human journey is a journey from me to us, from me to we, from I to thou. That is the human journey. And when you cannot find your way in, try to realize that that which is within you is being expressed outside you, that that which is in you is everywhere around you. And the trick in all of this is caring for others over yourself. That which will allow you to endure is the shift of attention from your own fear and your own drama and your own terror into helping, surrounding, warming, comforting someone else. It's a huge leap, but it is the most human and spiritual thing we can do. To go out to those who need when we are most in need. To care for another when we most need to be cared for. Selflessness. In the midst of raging self-involvement, to somehow move beyond that and realizing other people need care. It's rare. It's celebrated when it's done. But if you want the technique, or the trick, if you want to call it that, or the mechanism that will allow you to become comforted in an unendurable moment, help somebody else be comforted. Reach out. This whole idea of selflessness, seems to be at the core of the spiritual journey. But what's so interesting about it is that it is, I want to be selfless. Help me be selfless. It's about me. And that's where we get into trouble. Because the spiritual journey is a selfish journey. It's a journey to help you. And at the core of that journey is not wanting to be selfless and not wanting to be spiritual, it's being selfless and being spiritual. Demonstrating your care and compassion not as a form of self-aggrandizement, not as a way of promoting how good and wonderful you are, but to do it because that is the human journey. I to thou. Everyone around you, I know this is hard to believe on some level, but is a reflection of who you are. Everyone. Even the ones you don't want to look at are direct reflections of who you are. in varying stages of misery and discomfort and struggle. Even the ones who are the most successful. I can tell you because I've spent time with some of those people. Excuse my nose. They are suffering. They suffer in their own way. We are all human. You know this idea that getting everything, he who has the most toys wins, that whole idea? It's all fine except for the fact that they take it all away in the end. So there's no anything that you get that's yours that you can hold on to, period. The trick is enjoy what you have and share it. Have what you have and lay it out as a banquet for others to be part of. This human journey and this urge to have a spiritual life has to be understood that it is a life of true service. Now, this does not mean that you set up a food kitchen or that you go out and work in a hospital or any of those things, which is completely fine if you want to do that, if you don't walk around patting yourself on the head and the shoulder every minute. The opportunity for selfless service is in front of us every moment of our life. Every day we can be of help. You can make a phone call to someone. You may be living with someone who needs help. You may have people around you who could benefit from your kindness and your love and your compassion and your attention. You have to figure that out for yourself. Who could it be? Who could I call today out of the blue and just say hi? How are you doing? I'll bet there are people. And there's probably a list of people you could do it to. You go, oh, no, not them. Consider them. Consider them. Truly, consider them. You will be surprised by how much you have to offer. One of the phrases that somebody ran by me recently, which has struck a big chord, is this idea, and you've all heard this a million times, and forgive what may be the cliche of this entire talk, but God is good. And I love taking the adjective out of that. So that, not that it defines God as someone who is good, but that the very essence of what is good is God. That the acts of goodness, good behavior, goodness in a community, goodness in general, is so holy. And it's so simple. And it's so available. We can do it all the time. Being a good person, not only is it exquisitely wonderful when it occurs, but if you look at it, the world that we live in, honestly, is constructed out of it. Without this underlying foundational goodness in life, none of us would be here. And you can look at places where that goodness is apparently on fire and evaporating and unendurably lost. And yet, occasionally in the faces of some of the people who are captured in those environments, you see goodness, profound goodness. And it shines like bright sunlight on a dark night, because goodness, when you're in unendurable conditions, is like miraculous. People who are suffering, loving others. People who are in horrible circumstance, wanting to care for somebody else. What better defines the human condition, the human journey, the world we're in? What happens when you love others and you can't find the doorway into yourself is quite extraordinary. Because the minute you reach out, it opens. The doorway, the undiscoverable doorway opens. Your caring for others has somehow allowed you to see that the doorway in is through them, but is also experienced in yourself. So as you give to another, this very heart-like opening occurs, and you experience the very thing you were looking for but couldn't get access to. This is our journey. We as quote-unquote spiritual people are trying to find a way to become less about us and more about what is. I will tell you that journey introduces you to more love, more beauty, more truth, and more pain and more suffering than you can imagine. You can't just get one without the other. It's all there. And once you start to take it on, once you take on the unendurable beauty as well as the unendurable awfulness and hatred and darkness of the world, once you take all of that on, this individual self starts to expand into something else, and you begin to have profound compassion for everyone around you, and you begin to realize they're hurting just like you are, and they are experiencing joy just like you do, and they are having hopes and ambitions just like you have or had. It's all one big mishmash of stuff going on that has a core need, which is you and your endurance and your ability to reach out and your ability to be good and to be compassionate and to be kind and to serve anyone who shows up in front of you. And if no one is in front of you, step out of the door and go outside and find them. They will be right there. People will appear over and over. And if you're not seeing them, it's because you're not willing to look. Everyone around you is ultimately scared, uncertain, and in need. And the thing you can offer is so simple, so simple. Just offer a moment of yourself or more. They may not take it, they may not want it, and they may resist. That's not your problem. Be selfless and watch what that does to the world. Learning to serve the world is the real spiritual ride that we're on. Learning to be available to the world in any way possible is the best expression of a human being. So, if you find yourself in unendurable states, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a job, whether it's a program of study, whether it's a physical condition that you found yourself in, whatever these things are, you can do it. You can do it. You can bear it, you can do it, and in the worst of it, be nice to others. And watch what that does. Any questions? This is too simplistic, right? It's like a kindergarten class, but trust me, it's so essential. It's so essential. And I can't believe that our minds don't trick us into it more often, but your heart will trick you into it or lead you into it regularly. Every time you're feeling constricted and angry and I don't know if I can do this, reach out. Please, just reach out. One other little tiny thing. Touch. I think I've talked about this before, but I think it's really important. The reason we manifest out of unmanifested nothingness appears to me to have something to do with touching ourselves. Discovering our being. I have to say, from a spiritual perspective, bringing my forefinger and thumb together elicits a kind of unbearable beauty and joy and connectivity and a sense of wholeness and a sense of being that is overwhelming to me. And the more I do it sensitively, consciously, the more I focus on this, the more I understand that I am. And then there's this remarkable thing that starts to happen where you let go of the touch. You let go, and that's a big journey in your heart. The feeling inside is powerful, and then you reach out and touch somebody else. That is the complete journey of a human being. Touching yourself, letting go, touching another. I assume you know this, but the exquisite nature of feeling deeply is what it feels like to touch yourself, what it feels like to let go of that and reach through the atmosphere to another and touch another. Of course, it's the beginning of connectivity, friendship, love. It turns into love and relationship. Touching another person is the beginning of sexual interaction. It is the beginning of new life. Reaching out and touching is so exquisite, and we all do it, but until you get quiet inside and realize what touching is and sensitize yourself to the whole experience of touching another, touching the self, you start to understand how touch and feel are so interrelated. And you start to feel what feelings are, and how feelings and touch are so dynamically connected. You know, and those of you who ever looked at pornography, you know you can feel another person without even touching, that the mind can feel another person, that you can look at someone who is beautiful or not beautiful and feel for them. You can look at someone who's in a wheelchair and feel for that person, and you can reach out and touch without even physically touching. You can offer something that is touchable. And touch can be a physical thing, and it can be an emotional thing. When you touch another person emotionally and you offer them your care and your love and your heart and your acknowledgement and your ear, it's so wonderful. So this reaching out to touch, this ability to offer yourself to another, is so part of the journey. And so I really encourage you to play with it, to play with the touch. You know, when you sit in meditation, you're supposed to, I don't know if you're supposed to, but you hold your hands and you put your thumb and forefinger together. The minute I do that, I am home. I know who I am. It is the most beautiful thing ever. And now, over the years of teaching, and it's been almost 50 years of teaching, I have learned how to touch with just movement of my hands. I can just move them around, and my hands have become sensitized to other people's need. And it goes to another person's chakra system or energy system, and it learns to look at knots, it learns to look at problems and difficulties and pains and sufferings in a person, and it touches them. In the same way that you go over to someone and put your arm around them, you can do all of that in a very subtle way. It's a mudra-like teaching, which has, for me, been extraordinarily evolutionary. I have become more and more and more involved in trying to touch people in these subtle spaces that I am directed to. Nothing in my mind knows how to go there, but the psyche knows exactly what to do. And I think all of our psyches, when you tune in, know how to reach out to another person in the way that they need to be reached out to, and to touch in a way they need to be touched. So I wanted to share this with you because this is something you can learn. This little thing of sitting like this changes the world. The opening up and letting go is really scary, but beautiful, and then actually landing on another person. And then learning to do it even without the physicality of it is a way of reaching out to people in when any situation you're in, and serving by loving, touching, giving them what they need. And if you can learn to do that, it's something I've started practicing on the street. And when I walk down the street, I reach out to people coming at me. Mostly they present themselves. They present themselves in a very real way, and I just feel the energy go and just do all of these incredible little manipulations, and you feel this unbelievable sense of service. You don't have to do anything. They don't even have to know it's happening. You can just do it. It's like love the people you're walking by. Love the people in the theater in front of you or in the aisle next to you. You can do this thing and you become a servant of what is. I want to leave behind. I talk as though I'm done, but I don't. And every day I think I'm done. But I want you to know there are these little things we can do to help each other that are simple and are not part of something grand or something, 500 years of spiritual practice. Just simple. Sit still, feel, touch, reach out, open up, share. And you're going to have a really amazing life going on, even when it's unendurable. And that sounds like a good note to end on.
I do have a question.
Okay, question.
So holiday time means, for me anyway, seeing some family members who I haven't seen in a while, and this talk about endurance was really appropriate for me. So different people want to spend more time with me than I want to spend with them, so it's a matter of frequency. Would I be selling them short if I accommodated their desired frequency, but without being into it, if you know what I mean? I mean, would I be humoring them in a sense? I would feel like I was humoring them.
I would go for, here's what happens for me. It's really interesting. When I work with somebody, the work keeps happening until something says done. It's a little bit like orgasm.
Okay.
You work until you go, oh, okay. And then you say done. And it's done. And the person will know that it's done. And you will know that it's done. And your walking away will not be abrasive. It will not seem inappropriate. It won't seem like short shrift or anything. It will just seem like you've done what you had to do. And it will be felt mutually. And you will be able to complete an action and move on. I mean, we are not in a place usually, unless you're literally married to somebody or work at a job situation where you can't get away from a boss or somebody. Most of us are free in these circumstances to have an action and walk away. If it's one of these things you have to live with, then you have to figure out what is that? What is the dance?
Right.
How do I do this? What do I do? It's really it's essential work, and if either you have a gift for it, or we make endless mistakes and create all these hostilities out there in the world, and there's nothing. You have karmic stuff to deal with. You have to go back and pay these things off, which is hard. So the trick is to pay it off as you go. Okay. People will gather around you. I mean, we had a really complicated Christmas here. I can't explain all the family tensions of Christmas, but I think most people understand the general universals of that.
Complicated,
yeah. I mean, we bought all these wonderful gifts for the grandchildren, and my daughter-in-law, who I love and who's very responsible, thought there were too many presents and started sneaking them away from under the tree so that the kids wouldn't be opening too many presents. I'm not on board with that. I think let them open all the presents they want. But okay, so the presents were going away, and I'm going okay. And then you get presents from people that speak to you and don't speak to you in some way, and everybody has different agendas, and people want this to eat and they don't want that to eat, and they want to go out, they don't want to go. I mean, all of this drama is happening, and I am feeling pulled in so many directions, and I finally just said, I have to, you speak your heart. I got really unhappy, and I just spoke directly to people. I just said, look, this is painful. Somebody said they were trying to help me. I said, you haven't helped me at all. You haven't done one thing to help. And these various things got done, and it got to a point where there was an honest dialogue happening with everybody. We were all just talking to each other like real people, and it was amazing. And we sat down for Christmas dinner, And I can only describe it as, the word I use is apotheosis. I'm not sure it's the right word. It was, everything came together. Blanche made the most delicious dinner. I cannot tell you. Ari had bought a wine that was really, I don't even drink wine very much, but it was really an amazing wine. We had all spoken during the day, so all of us were at a place of sharing and knowing each other. And we sat there at the dinner, and I looked at my grandchildren, and I saw who they were going to be in 20 years.
Wow.
I just saw the people coming out of them, the beauty of the people. And I saw this moment, and I just said, we have arrived at perfection. It will never be better. It may replicate again. It may happen again. But it happened out of dialogue, out of hugging, out of touching, out of everybody expressing their own nature and finding a bizarre harmony in the absolute disharmony of the event. And it was completely, momentarily wonderful. And if you can capture that moment and realize it actually happened, you can carry that a long distance. And I did and have. And was so grateful for it. And, you can't rebuild those moments. Rainbows come and disappear. You have them. The beauty is in their passing. Right. But it was really wonderful. And we all, in our own funny way, worked at it. But I knew I had to be real. I had to be real with everybody. The only way I could get through the holidays was reality. Mm-hmm. I could not pretend to be a happy family member when I was not happy. Okay. And that authenticity worked. And so that's my advice to people. But you have to be careful because you can't be hostile. You have to be honest. Right. You have to be real. And people have to feel that reality because it's reality and therefore shared. Mm-hmm. Unless it's just your bullshit, which is a whole other thing. Right. But if you're not sharing bullshit, but if you're talking your truth, it will be perceived. And other people will begin to share, and the truth starts to emanate outward, and you start to have a table full of people who are open to a shared truth, and it is exquisite. And the wine was really good. Or orange wine. I've never had orange wine, but it was really, really good. So anyway, it's possible, guys, to have an amazing life, but you got to work through a lot of unendurable stuff. Anybody else? Yes.
You mentioned the examples of Yemen and Paradise and people who have endured or haven't endured this destiny. If you were in the presence of these people who have felt that everything that they believed in has been wiped away, that the center is no longer, and any fragment of spiritual faith or love that they might have had is suddenly in question, what do you say to a person like that?
I don't think words would do anything. I don't think. I don't know. I've been around people dying, and I find that words are really awful, saying stuff. This is where touch works. And just sitting with people and being with them and letting them know you get it. What to do for people in that level of extremity. I haven't been around very much of that. And you can send money to the Red Cross, and you could try. I guess you could show up there and bring them stuff. I'm not going to fly to Yemen. I know that's not on my agenda, and there are a lot of people around me are hurting, so I can handle the ones that are in front of me. Some people have to go out further and do that work. That's according to your particular gestalt and system inside, but there are levels of suffering that I think are not bearable, and yet people somehow get through. Beckett wrote this play with a great title, I Can't Go On, I'll Go On. That's the name of the play. That's human condition. You go on, and something happens, and you come back, life comes back in a funny, strange way over periods of time. You meet Holocaust survivors, how they've lived whole lives, and they never get over the horror of that moment, but they've filled it with so many other things. So whatever life is, it does bring back a certain kind of healing. The Job experience of losing everything and then having it all come back more, it still doesn't make up perhaps for the losses that you had, but life is getting and losing and getting and losing and getting and losing. What can we do in that process except this? As far as I know. And you can do this invisibly, meaning your heart goes out, literally goes out, and embraces the people that you see. I believe it goes to them. It goes to those little children. It goes to their parents. It goes to the horror. The world is full of horror. You can go out there as much as you can in your love and compassion and fill the world with your love, but do it from the ground up, from the people in front of you. It's no good to love somebody who's in Yemen if you don't love the person who you're living with. That's not the way it works. Rudy said, start at the center of the mandala and you work out. You can go as far as you can go, but don't make yourself somebody who's trying to save the world but can't save anybody in their vicinity. It's just not practical or meaningful. And we all have a very small role to play. We're not out to save the world. We're out to save who shows up, who's in front of us. And you guys are in front of me. I'm in front of you. We're all here trying to be of service. And your showing up here serves me beyond belief. And I hope when I sit here and get out of the way, the energy that comes through will serve you. And there's a kind of a dance of connectivity that really ultimately nurtures and saves people, I think. So I'm saved by your showing up, and I hope the opposite becomes true. We work for each other. So again, these are such simple messages, but they seem to be needed. And we're about to face a new year in 2 days. Everybody decides, to go on a diet and go to the gym and do all of these things. But let's just decide to be unusually kind to one another in the coming year, because it will be helpful. And to reach out in every way possible to as many people as you can and let them know you're there. It's so helpful. Okay? So Happy New Year, everybody. And I love you for being here. I love you, period. And I am so grateful that you show up. It really is a gift for me. And thank you.